Thank you, Bronwyn. Look, it's been a rough road. I'm not going to deny that. I think probably the biggest thing is you had a lot of lethargy in the system. Chelsea's been around since 2001. It sort of seemed to be in limbo. There was a lot of news in the press constantly about Chelsea, where it was, what it was doing. It didn't seem to be able to shake the bad news. So a lot of the perspective really from my taking over with my new management team was really based on saying, you can't keep doing the same thing. We had to, necessity drove us into a place where we really had to rethink how we were going to do things. We came out of a recap in 2017 that wasn't adequate for the purposes of going forward. That was patently obvious from the results that we presented. And we also sat with a situation where we had to be honest about certain things. We had very difficult decisions that had to be made over the sort of past 3 years, or actually since I took over. And that was the foundation of the 4-pillar strategy that myself and Zaf, the CFO, have been executing on since I took over in May of last year. So the first thing was for us to face off with what we're not. We were not able to compete in the CapEx race. The incumbent operators were just simply putting too much money into a network. For us to take a position where we roamed on a network while we built out another network, it was just never going to generate enough cash for us to be as a third player to get to this proverbial scale that one required there. That was the first thing. The second thing was that the analogy of build it and they will come and get subscribers at almost any cost was something that had come out in the last set of results that we released in October. It was a difficult decision because you saw a bit of contraction in the network. People were anxious, what's going to happen? Why are you getting rid of subscribers? But the numbers don't lie. So at the end of the day, we had a 35% reduction in the base, and we actually lost marginal revenue for an incredible amount of saving or in cost. So we have to be realistic about what do we do as a corporate relative to what's required.
That is, just if we can pause there for a moment, because there are a lot of companies that are going through stringent turnarounds in the current environment. What can you weigh in with, given your experience to this point, when it comes to making those difficult decisions?
Simply put, do it. Make the decision. You can't pontificate on it. So when we had to make a call on getting the black content platform down that cost us nearly 1.5 billion rand and think that we were going to compete in a content play, crazy. You had to just make the decision and cut it. There was no point in putting good money after bad. When we had to go and have a look at what we were going to do with the Section 189 process, this was a business that its relative size was just carrying too many staff. It was one of the most difficult moments in my time to start a process. Then I had to go and look into every single cost line and make calls that people were sort of saying to you, yes, but you're going to save yourself to profitability. Never. You cannot save yourself to profitability. That is not possible. What you had to do was you had to get a new business model in place. And that was what we were doing. And that was where the 4 pillars were. And the biggest challenge I had was to actually take the view that I didn't need CapEx to go forward, that I could go into a model with my roaming agreement with MTN that's completely counterintuitive to what everybody in the industry is telling you to go and do. But the truth of the matter is it was a very well thought out plan. And that's what we're executing on now. But to sit and say that I would be able to go and raise more money, whether a debt or equity, to put into a business that hasn't produced anything, how would I get that past anybody? So to go to your question, you have to make the decision and write it out.
Where to from here? You've got the agreement with MTN, you are shaking up things. Are you positive, having come through this very tough period?
I am, and I'll tell you why. We don't have an income statement problem. Yes, the results look terrible because of the impairments. They're non-cash impairments that I need to point out, included in the set of results now that we had of this wonderful 7.5 billion that was put out there. The truth of the matter is 5.5 billion of that was related to impairment write-downs that is due to us migrating into the MTN agreement. So that's the network that has to come. IFRS requires us to do that. Then there was costs associated with what would be wiped out on the recap. So the depreciation of the rand is included in what will happen on the recap. So all of those are sitting in the results that actually will go out of the system recap. So the thing was, did we have a business day one that generates cash, which is we more than 10 times lifted the cash generated out of operations, and we doubled the EBIT. So we needed to say, if we fix the balance sheet, do we have a sustainable business? That was the first point. The second point was, I don't believe we have an ego about our size. At the end of the day, it's about profitability. It's about sitting and saying, if you've invested shareholder money into this, if you do a recap into this business, can we trade normally and get out there? I can't be in the game of millions of subscribers and millions of rands in capex. It's just not where I'm at. So I have to be real about that. And that's the forward going future. So I'm sitting and I'm saying, how do I keep market prevalence, i.e. the ability to buy up capacity? That makes me a check and balance within the ecosystem. We're still a network. All we have done is we virtualized the radio access portion. The tower that you see out there is now virtual, but we're still a core network. And I was at the presentation almost laboring the point to say, we're not a super MVNO as people think. We keep our core, we keep our billing system, we keep our backhaul, we keep everything that's the identity of an MNO. But what we needed to do was make sure that we had a sustainable business. And that's what we've done with the 4 pillars of the strategy.
In terms of the future and outlook for the group, are you, give me a sense of the outlook, obviously bearing in mind our reality, the COVID-19 reality that we're living through at the moment.
So look, COVID-19, I don't think any industry has been immune to COVID-19. And the reason I say that is because you've had a significant contraction in the economy in general. So yes, there was an element of a boost that you would have seen in the economy because of the telco space. But the truth of the matter is disposable income is falling. And mobile telephony expenditure that a person pays is a competing product in FMCG. So whether you're buying cold drink or beer or cigarettes or airtime, they're all kind of competing for each other. So we need to be realistic about that. What it has to drive in us is an ability to become more efficient, because you cannot ignore the fact as an MNO that we have an obligation to bridge the digital divide. We have an obligation to make sure that the digitalization of the economy yields the results. And that's not only for the MNOs, that's going to be for every single application that runs over the MNO. So how do you build an ecosystem? So the first thing we do, the most pressing issue for me, is obviously to get the recap over the line, and there's fatigue in that deal. And I can't talk too much about that because it's really a shareholder issue. But I've, with my management team, delivered what we believe is a substantial set of results that says there's a case for a recap. That's the first. And it says that we've got a business model that's going to enhance the competition within the industry, because we buy up capacity, and buying up capacity means that we will get the best price that we pass on. And then we need to enable people through our MVNO business. We need to have an open ecosystem where every digital player can get access to the nuts and bolts, which is actually the bearers, if you think about it, 3G, 4G, and in the future 5G. That's our role in the industry. And it's different now to what it was 5-10 years ago.
You started the conversation by saying that part of that turnaround process is asking yourself whether you have a sustainable business. Are you convinced you have a sustainable business at this juncture?
I wouldn't be putting myself out there to ask shareholders or people to come into a recap again. I think I'm more cognizant of anybody that the business plan plus to this recap is what everything's going to hinge on, and it's really been well thought out in my view. I've luckily been in the industry, basically my whole life since I finished articles. So I'm very much cognizant of it. But the thing is, you have to look at the world different. And that's what Cell C did for me, is that I sat down on day one and I realized there's absolutely no way I can employ the same narrative as anybody else. I have to do this thing different. And it was incumbent on me to put something out there that I believed could change that. And that's what we've done.
What will be the benchmarks from here? So obviously the recap process needs to be done and dusted. Give me some timelines that we're working to, because we're going to keep engaging and monitoring your track, turnaround track as you execute on this.
No, of that I have absolutely no doubt. And it's going to be, I said that the results that we just posted were a tricky set of results, because you've got to kind of unpack all the things that are moving around in the numbers. And you're going to have that for at least a few reporting periods as we move through the transition period and sort of unwind the radio access network. But I think to your point about what is the matrices. So is subscriber numbers a measure of the health of a mobile network offer? Well, that remains to be seen. Is CapEx intensity and how much you keep putting into CapEx going to be the indicator of the day? I'm not convinced that that's it anymore. I think what we're really going to be doing is we're going to be sitting and saying, as an enabler, where do we find ourselves in a value chain that we can connect And what do we get as part of that? I'll give you a simple thing. If you go and have a look at just the application, Zoom and Microsoft Teams that we're on now. A year ago, how much did we really know about them? But this application is running on the back of a network. And nobody's asking how much Microsoft or Zoom is paying for access to the network. They're pushing it to the network to say, no, you need to provide more data for it. And yes, there's an obligation for that, but what's the efficiencies? And how do we build ourselves back into that ecosystem? That's the focus on what we will do with products, with our customer service notion, that type of stuff. We've still maintained a strong brand presence. We're still in the top 30 brand. And even though I'm in the press, not always for the right reasons, we still seem to be. We're a true South African network. We've done well on the Ask Orange in terms of customer service. And we will get like for like going forward in terms of evening out network presence, evening out network quality, and that going forward. So I think in the strategy, we've leveled the playing field to a certain extent in terms of where we were. We were way behind in rollout, and that we will fix. And now it's incumbent on us to put innovative products on the back of what is in our core. And in a way, if you think about data and voice as being the revenue stream of today, I see it almost as the cost of sale tomorrow. And that as we move into our digital migration and the digital player and technology player we want to be, that's where I would see us in 5 years.
Douglas Craigie Stevenson joining me here on the C-Suite on the Nielsen Network.